The year was 2331. Humanity had reached the stars, but it was not free. The galaxy belonged to the Empire. The Empire was not a single planet, not a single people. It was a vast machine of war and control. Dozens of worlds bowed before it. Hundreds of fleets carried its banners. Its armies were endless, its weapons older than Earth itself. To many, the Empire was not a government. It was a shadow, a storm, a monster that swallowed everything it touched. For years, Earth had been left alone, too small, too far, too weak. The Empire's eyes were on richer worlds, stronger targets. Humanity lived in fear, but also in silence, hoping the storm would pass them by. But in 2331, the silence ended. It began with a signal, not a whisper, not a negotiation. A voice, cold, heavy, commanding every screen across Earth flickered to life. Every radio, every transmission, every device filled with the same message. In every home, in every city, in every corner of the world, people heard the words at the same moment. Earth will surrender. Lay down your weapons. Submit or be destroyed. The words struck like thunder. The sound carried no emotion. It was not a threat made in anger. It was simply a fact, spoken like truth, as if the future had already been written. Children froze in schools. Workers dropped their tools in factories. Haters stared in silence at their screens. The streets of great cities grew still, as if the whole planet held its breath. Was this the end? On the oceans, ships stopped moving. In the skies, pilots gripped their controls. In space, satellites turned their silent eyes toward the black void. Humanity's heart beat louder than ever before, and in that heartbeat there was only fear. Some believed it was a mistake, a false signal, a lie. But deep inside, everyone knew. The Empire had found them. In the great halls of government, chaos began. Men and women shouted over each other. "We cannot fight them," some cried. "We must submit or our people will burn." Others slammed their fists on the tables, voices shaking with rage. "If we surrender, we are slaves. It's better to die standing than live on our knees." The argument spread beyond the halls of power. Across Earth, billions of voices joined. Some called for peace. Some called for war. Some begged for safety. Some demanded defiance. The planet was divided, but all shared the same truth. The Empire had given them no choice: surrender or destruction. Yet, in the silence of fear, another feeling began to rise. A whisper, a memory. Humanity had always been underestimated. For centuries, the world had been broken and rebuilt. Humanity had faced extinction before, plagues, disasters, invasions. Each time they were pushed to the edge. Each time they were told they would not survive. And yet, they survived. Could this be different? Could humanity fight the Empire? No one knew the answer, but the question itself was enough to spark something dangerous. Something the Empire had not expected. The broadcast repeated again, cutting into the minds of billions. Earth will surrender. Lay down your weapons. Submit or be destroyed. The words grew heavier with every repetition. It was like a hammer, striking over and over. Some wept, some cursed. Some prayed, and yet in the silence after, many felt something else. Anger, the Empire spoke, as if Earth was already broken, as if the fight was already lost, as if humanity was nothing. But humanity had never been nothing. Humanity had never surrendered before. The demand for submission, meant to bring fear, instead brought fury. In hidden bunkers, deep below mountains, military leaders looked at one another with grim eyes. They knew the truth. Earth's fleets were small compared to the Empire's. Earth's armies were young compared to their veterans. But even then they whispered the thought no one dared speak aloud. What if we fight? In the dark silence of space. Far beyond the reach of the Empire's gaze, Earth had been preparing, quietly, secretly. Ships had been built, weapons forged, a hidden fleet, waiting for the day when humanity would need it. And now, that day had come. But the people of Earth did not know this yet. All they knew was the voice, a voice that carried no mercy, a voice that carried no hope, a voice that demanded only surrender. On the streets of New York, a mother held her child close, staring at the sky as if the heavens themselves had betrayed her. In Beijing, millions of workers stood frozen, their machines silent. In Nairobi, a preacher raised his voice above the silence, crying that humanity must stand. In Rio, gangs stopped fighting, staring together at screens that told them the same fate. For the first time in history, every human being looked at the stars with the same eyes, eyes filled with fear, eyes filled with questions. Was this the end of Earth, or the beginning of something greater? The broadcast ended, the screens went black, the silence returned. But it was not the same silence. It was heavier, darker, alive. Every person on Earth knew the truth. The Empire had spoken, and now Earth had to answer. The Empire's words spread like fire. The demand for surrender echoed in every city, in every home, in every mind. Earth had heard the voice of power, and now the planet trembled. At first, there was silence. The kind of silence that comes when the world itself forgets to breathe. But silence did not last. Fear followed. Fear louder than any army. Fear heavier than any weapon. In the cities, the streets grew restless. Crowds gathered around screens, replaying the message again and again. Each replay felt like a knife cutting deeper. People whispered, people shouted, people cried. Some refused to believe it. It is fake, they said. It is a trick. Aliens do not exist. But deep down, they knew. The Empire was real. The demand was real. The danger was real. In the halls of government, chaos had a new name. World leaders argued behind closed doors, but their words carried across the planet. Some demanded surrender. We cannot fight them, they said, their voices heavy with fear. If we resist, billions will die. The Empire will burn our cities, poison our skies, erase us. Others rose in defiance. Their fists slammed on tables, their voices sharp like blades. If we kneel, we are no longer human. We will live as slaves, as animals, as shadows of what we once were. Better to fight, even if it means death. No one could agree. Fear twisted every decision. Doubt poisoned every thought. And as leaders argued, the people of Earth watched, waiting. Hoping for answers that never came. In the quiet of homes, families sat together in the dark. Children asked questions their parents could not answer. Will they come? Will they kill us? Are we going to die? Mothers held their children tighter. Fathers stared at the stars with silent anger. Grandparents whispered prayers to gods who had never faced an empire in the slums and broken streets. The poor felt the weight first. They had no shelters, no armies, no protection. For them, the empire's demand was not a warning, it was a death sentence. Some begged the governments to surrender. Give them what they want, they cried. Save us. Do not make us fight a war we cannot win. But not all begged. Some clenched their fists. Some whispered words of fury. Let them come, they said. Let them see what it means to face humans. The fear spread beyond Earth. On the colonies of Mars, miners dropped their tools and stared at the red sky. On the stations orbiting Jupiter, engineers froze, hands shaking above control panels. On the icy moons, settlers whispered through static-filled radios, asking the same question. Is it true? Is the Empire here? Everywhere, the same storm rose. Fear, doubt, anger, hope, and yet hidden beneath the fear was something else. A spark. History had taught humans one lesson. No enemy, no matter how powerful, could break their spirit without a fight. From ancient wars to global disasters, humanity had always found a way to resist. And now, staring at the stars, they remembered. Somewhere, in the oceans, soldiers whispered promises. If they come, we will stand. Somewhere in the mountains, scientists whispered secrets. We are not as weak as they think. Somewhere in the shadows, leaders whispered oaths. If we burn fighting. But the ordinary people did not know of these secrets. They only knew fear. and fear is dangerous. Riots began. In the cities of Europe, crowds clashed with police, screaming for answers. In Asia, factories shut down as workers refused to work, their minds poisoned by panic. In Africa, millions filled the streets, calling for leaders to stand tall, to defy the empire. In the Americas, protests grew wild, some demanding peace, others demanding war. The world was breaking apart, piece by piece. Even before the empire arrived, and then the message returned. The same voice, the same words, Earth will surrender. Lay down your weapons, submit, or be destroyed. It cut into broadcasts, into radios, into the silence of the night, again and again and again. The empire was not asking, was reminding. It was crushing the human spirit, step by step. But the empire did not understand humans, because each time the words played, some broke into tears, but others clenched their jaws. Each time the voice echoed, some begged for mercy, but others whispered for vengeance. Each time the empire threatened, some hearts shattered, but others hardened. The fear was real, but so was the anger. In the darkness of space, the empire's fleet waited. Vast ships of steel and fire, engines glowing like suns, weapons pointed at Earth. They expected silence, expected surrender, expected fear to do their work for them. And on Earth, fear was indeed spreading. But with it came something else, something dangerous, something the empire had not counted on. Defiance. The people of Earth were afraid. But in every city, in every street, in every home, one thought began to. The empire thought Earth was weak. They saw only one small world, one young species, one planet that could be crushed with a single fleet. They believed humans had no chance, no weapons strong enough, no ships fast enough, no armies big enough. But the empire did not know Earth's secret. For decades, while the galaxy ignored them, humans had been preparing. Not in the open, not with banners or boasts. In silence, in shadows. In secret places no one outside Earth had ever seen. Beneath the oceans, deep under the crushing waves, massive hangars stretched for miles. Inside them waited machines of war. Gray steel monsters, their hulls hidden from satellites, their weapons sleeping but ready. Battleships, cruisers, carriers, ships built for one reason, to fight a war humanity hoped would never come. In the hollowed mountains of the Rockies, in secret bases across Siberia, under the deserts of Australia, the work had never stopped. Engineers toiled in silence. Scientists built weapons no one outside their labs had ever touched. Pilots trained in black skies, their ships invisible. To all, the world believed they were building defenses, maybe simple ships to guard their colonies. But the truth was far greater. Humanity was building a fleet that no one knew existed, a fleet hidden from the stars, a fleet hidden from the empire. It had started long ago, after Earth's first contact with the wider galaxy. The leaders of humanity had watched other worlds fall. Species with strength, species with knowledge, species greater than Earth, all crushed by the empire. And so, the decision was made. It's quiet, secret, ruthless. Humanity would never allow itself to kneel. If the empire ever came, Earth would not wait to die. Earth would strike back, and so the hidden project was born. Decades of work, decades of lies, decades of silence. A project known only by whispers, the Black Fleet. Now, in 2331, the Black Fleet was no longer just steel and silence. It was alive. In the cold dark of space near Saturn, great shadows drifted. Ships the size of cities armed with weapons no alien had ever seen. Their hulls black as night, their engines silent, waiting for the order that would wake them. In the asteroid belts, factories disguised as mines forged ammunition by the ton. Cannons that could rip through armor, missiles that could burn through. Shields, drones faster than thought itself, and on Earth, beneath the oceans and mountains, crews prepared. Soldiers strapped into chairs, pilots placed helmets on their heads. Engineers whispered final prayers as they armed weapons that had never been tested in war. The people of Earth did not know. On the streets they argued and feared. In their homes they prayed for peace or begged for safety. But beneath their feet, their world had already chosen its path. The leaders of the Black Fleet were silent. They listened to the Empire's demand. They heard the words that carried across the stars. Earth will surrender. Lay down your weapons. Submit or be destroyed. And in their silence they smiled. Because Earth had weapons. Earth had ships. Earth had teeth. But even the Black Fleet had doubts. The Empire was vast, its power unmatched. One hidden fleet would not be enough to win. Not in the long war. It's not against endless armies. And yet, the Black Fleet was not built to win easily. It was built for one thing only, to make the galaxy remember that humans do not kneel. The first blow would not be surrender. The first blow would be fire. Inside a command bunker below the Rocky Mountains, a general stood before his officers. His face was lined with years of silence, his eyes hard as steel. Spoke no great speech, no long words, only this: they believe we are weak. Let us show them our strength. The officers rose. The order was given. The Black Fleet would rise. In the oceans, the waters split as the first ships began to climb. Waves boiled, thunder rolled, as great metal giants broke through the surface. Their engines lit the night like second suns. The seas roared as the hidden fleet took flight. From the mountains, hangar doors cracked open. Dust and stone fell away as massive ships crawled from their tombs of rock. One by one they lifted, shaking the earth as they ascended into the sky. Across the world, eyes turned upward. People gasped. They had lived in fear, waiting for an answer. Now they saw it. Ships, hundreds of them rising from the oceans. From the mountains, from the deserts, from the skies. Humanity's answer: the fear on Earth did not vanish, but it changed. For the first time since the broadcast, there was something stronger than fear. Hope. The Empire believed Earth had no weapons. The Empire believed Earth would kneel. But hidden in silence, humanity had built a fleet of war. And now, for the first time, the Empire would see it. The Black Fleet was awake. The Empire's fleet entered the solar system like a storm. They came in silence at first, giant shadows cutting across the black void. Their ships were massive, stretching for miles, glowing with the cold light of alien engines. War banners of the Empire hung across their hulls, symbols of fear recognized on 100 worlds. For the people of Earth, it was the first time they truly saw their enemy. The broadcasts had been terrifying. The voice had been heavy, but nothing compared to this sight, an armada larger than anything humans had ever imagined. The Empire was not bluffing. They had come to collect Earth's surrender, Earth's destruction. Across Earth, billions watched the skies. Cameras locked onto the invading ships. News channels broadcast the live feed. Cities gathered in silence as they stared upward, waiting for the end. Some prayed. Some wept. Some screamed at their leaders to kneel before it was too late. But above the dark side of the moon, something stirred. At first, it was only a shadow, a faint movement easily missed against the stars. Then another, then dozens. One by one, enormous. Shapes detached from the lunar surface, engines glowing with fire. They were not alien. They were not the Empire. They were human. The Black Fleet had risen. The first battleship to break orbit was called Dauntless. It was a name chosen long ago, a promise carved into steel. Its hull was black and sharp, built for war, armed with cannons that glowed like suns. Behind it, more ships followed, cruisers, destroyers, carriers, a storm of human steel rising to meet the storm of the Empire. The world gasped. People in every city saw it live on their screens. Children pointed in awe. Soldiers saluted through tears. For the first time since the Empire's demand, Earth had an answer. The Empire's fleet stopped. Their commanders, watching from the safety of towering flagships, stared in silence at the unexpected sight. Humans were not supposed to have this. They were not supposed to have fleets of war. The Empire had studied Earth. They had counted its colonies, its defenses, its strength. None of their records showed this, and yet, here it was. A fleet rising like a ghost from the shadows of the moon. The Empire sent another broadcast, this time with anger. Your world was told to surrender. You dare to defy the Empire. You dare to rise against us. The voice carried through the stars. But this time, Earth replied. A single transmission left the bridge of Dauntless. The words were simple. The voice was steady. We do not surrender. We fight. That was the first answer. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, alive, filled with something new. The Empire's commanders stared, and for the first time in centuries, they felt something they had nearly forgotten. Surprise, the battle began in a flash of light. Human weapons fired first. Massive cannons thundered across space, beams of energy, cutting through the void. Missiles streaked like firestorms, splitting into hundreds of smaller warheads. Drones burst from carriers like swarms of angry insects, racing toward the Empire's ships. The Empire roared back. Their weapons were ancient, powerful, designed to shatter planets. Blue fire lit the skies, tearing through human formations. Cruisers exploded in storms of flame. Human pilots screamed into their coms before vanishing into silence. The war had begun on Earth. The people watched in horror. Screens showed the first explosions, the first human losses. Battleships burning, fragments of steel falling back into the atmosphere. Families cried as they saw ships vanish. For a moment, fear returned. For a moment, it felt like the Empire would win in minutes. But then, something changed. The Dauntless struck first blood. A single massive cannon fired, and one of the Empire's destroyers shattered into pieces. Human cheers rose across the world. The impossible had happened. The Empire's ship had fallen. From there, the fight only grew. Every time an Earth ship was destroyed, another rose to take its place. Every time. The Empire advanced. Humans pushed back with fury. For every loss, there was defiance. For every death, there was rage. The Empire had expected weakness. They had expected fear. What they found instead was madness, a species that refused to die quietly. The commanders of the Empire sent messages to one another, their calm voices now shaken. They should not have these weapons, one whispered. They should not fight like this, said another. But still, the humans fought. In the command bunker on Earth, leaders watched the battle unfold. The room shook with tension, every eye locked on the burning stars above. Some cried at the losses. Some clenched their fists at the victories. But all of them knew the truth. This was no longer just about survival. This was about sending a message. Humanity's first answer to the Empire was not silence, not surrender, not begging. It was war in orbit. The skies burned. Human ships fought like wolves, tearing at a beast far greater than themselves. The Empire pressed forward, confident in its size, but for every ship they destroyed, humans took another. The Empire's fleet stretched across the stars like a wall of fire. Their destroyers and carriers burned with blue light, their cannons older than Earth's history. Against them, humanity's black fleet surged forward like wolves unleashed. From the shadows, the void once silent, now thundered with light and death. The first wave struck with fury. Earth's cruisers fired everything they had: plasma beams, railguns, missiles that split into 100 smaller warheads. The void turned into a storm of fire. The missiles cut through shields, slamming into the Empire's forward line. Explosions lit the black sky, and for the first time in centuries, Imperial ships were forced backward. But the Empire answered in kind. Their weapons were vast, designed to crush planets. Blue fire burned across the fleet, slicing through human formations. Whole squadrons were erased in seconds. The hulls of human ships tore open, spilling fire and bodies into the cold dark. The void became a graveyard of steel. On Earth, Lydians watched live broadcasts of the battle. The skies above cities lit up with faint flashes, distant but real. In New York, families screamed when a battleship was shown breaking apart. In Tokyo, crowds cheered when an Imperial destroyer exploded into nothing. In Johannesburg, in Moscow, in Sao Paulo, every face was turned to the heavens. The people had never felt so powerless. They could only watch, pray, and hope. But every victory, no matter how small, sent a surge of fire into their hearts. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Admiral Reyes stood with eyes of stone. Round him alarms screamed, crews shouted, the deck shook with every strike. Yet his voice was steady. "Hold the line," he said. "Push them back. They will bleed." The Dauntless turned, its massive cannons charging. Then, with a roar that lit the void, it fired. A beam of light tore across space and split one of the Empire's cruisers in two. Fragments scattered into the stars, glowing like dying suns. The bridge erupted in cheers. Humanity had drawn blood again, the Empire's commanders, safe inside. Their fortress-like flagships were stunned. The humans should have been broken by now. Their fleets were new, their technology young. And yet, these humans fought like no species the Empire had ever seen. Every human loss was answered with rage. Every human death created more fire. The Empire had faced many enemies, but never one that refused to accept defeat, even when outnumbered. Even when outgunned, they are not fighting for victory, one alien officer whispered. They are fighting for survival. Survival made them dangerous. The battle raged on. Drones swarmed across the void. Tiny machines tearing into enemy ships like metal locusts. Empire fighters tried to burn them down, but the swarms kept coming, overwhelming shields, eating into engines, exploding inside hulls. Human battleships moved in packs, striking and retreating, like wolves hunting giants. The Empire's heavy destroyers struggled to keep up with the speed of human tactics, but the cost was high. For every Imperial ship destroyed, 5 human ships burned. Entire crews vanished in seconds. Screams filled comes before silence claimed. Them, the Black Fleet bled, but it did not break. On the ground, fear turned to fury. People no longer begged for surrender. They shouted at the skies, voices trembling but strong. "Fight!" they cried. "Fight for Earth!" Cities erupted into chants as they watched their fleets burn and strike again. Fear had turned into defiance. Even children, too young to understand war, pressed their hands against screens and whispered, "To the ships above, don't stop, don't give up." The Empire pressed harder. Their massive carriers released waves of fighters, black clouds swarming the human fleet. Their dreadnoughts, titans of steel, advanced with unstoppable force. Each shot from their cannons tore human ships apart like paper. The Black Fleet staggered. Alarms screamed across the Dauntless. Hulls cracked. Engines burned. And yet Admiral Reyes did not flinch. "They want us to kneel," he said, his voice cutting through chaos. "Show them what it means to stand." The humans obeyed. Then came the moment that shook the galaxy. The carrier Valiant, badly damaged, engines failing, drifted into the center of the battle. Its captain, knowing the ship was lost, gave one final order: load every missile, power every cannon, aim at their flagship. The crew obeyed without question. The Valiant fired everything it had in one last storm of fire. Missiles streaked across space. Beams of energy cut through the void. The carrier burned as enemy fire ripped it apart, but before it died, it stormed, reached the Empire's flagship. A wall of explosions consumed the giant vessel. Its shields cracked, its armor shattered. And for the first time in centuries, an Imperial flagship fell in battle. The void shook with the fire. The humans screamed in victory, and across the galaxy, hidden species watching the war felt something impossible. The Empire had bled, but the battle was far from over. The Empire still had more ships, more fire, more power. The humans were still outnumbered, still breaking, still bleeding. Yet one truth had been carved into the stars. The Empire demanded surrender. Humanity answered with fire, and the void itself carried their defiance. The void was still burning. Debris floated across the black, glowing faintly with dying fire. Broken ships drifted like ghosts, their metal hulls twisted and torn.
Ow.
The cries of battle still echoed through Kum's voices cut short.
Ow.
Signals lost, silence taking the place of life. The battle was not over. But one truth had already shaken the stars. The Empire had bled. An Imperial flagship was gone, destroyed, shattered by human fire. It was something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. On the bridges of their surviving flagships, Imperial commanders stared in silence. Their alien faces, once calm with arrogance, now twitched with disbelief. Their ships had crushed 100 worlds, 1,000 rebellions. No species had ever stood so long. No species had ever taken so much blood from the Empire. And yet here, at the edge of a forgotten spiral arm, a single world had done what no one thought possible. Humans had drawn blood. Reports flooded in. Officers shouted over one another. There. Voices sharp with panic. Losses on the eastern flank. Drones breaching hull compartments. Human battleships regrouping coordinates incoming. The commanders had expected an easy victory, a clean conquest, short, bloody lesson to remind the galaxy who ruled the stars. Instead, they found chaos. They found resistance. They found enemies who did not fight like the others. Humans fought differently. Most species broke when faced with the Empire's might. Their fleets scattered. Their soldiers surrendered. Their leaders begged for mercy. But humans grew stronger. With each loss, every ship that fell only drove the survivors harder. Every death only added fire to their weapons. Where most species fought to win, humans fought to hurt, to strike, to bleed their enemy no matter the cost. And that made them dangerous. On Earth, the people watched in awe as the battle dragged on. The fear that had crushed them hours ago was gone. In its place was fire. Every destroyed Imperial ship sent cheers rolling through the cities. Every human death brought tears, but also fury. The world had changed. They were no longer waiting for the end. They were fighting for tomorrow. Inside the Empire's War Council chamber aboard their secondary flagship, the High Commander stood, silent, his eyes fixed on the map of the battle. Red marks for human ships, blue marks for Imperial ones. The red marks should have been wiped away by now. Instead, they burned across the map like fire spreading through dry wood. They should not be able to resist us, one officer whispered. They should not exist at this level, another hissed. We studied them. We measured their colonies, their weapons, their strength. They were nothing. But the commander shook his head. His voice was low, heavy. They are not nothing. They are something else. Back on the front lines, Admiral, Reyes stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, his uniform torn, his face lit by the glow of burning screens. His fleet was bleeding. He knew it. Half their ships were gone, their weapons were overheating, their shields cracked. And still, he pressed forward. He knew the truth. If Earth fell today, there would be no tomorrow. Humanity's only chance was to fight until the Empire remembered their name. His voice rang out over the coms. They wanted fear. Give them fire. They wanted surrender. Give them defiance. Show them what it means to face humanity. His words spread across the fleet. Pilots screamed with fury as they dove into enemy lines. Gunners fired until their weapons melted. Captains rammed their ships into enemy hulls when their ammo ran dry. The Empire wanted surrender. Instead, they found madness. The shock grew with every passing minute. Imperial officers whispered what none dared say aloud. If this continued, if humans survived even a single day against them, then the galaxy would change, because others were watching. The enslaved species, the conquered worlds, the broken empires of the past. All of them would see Earth's defiance. All of them would hear the message hidden in every explosion: the Empire can bleed, and once that truth was known, it could never be buried again. 4. The first time in centuries, fear touched the Empire, not fear of defeat, but fear of what came after. If humans survived, they would inspire others. If humans stood, they would ignite rebellion. If humans endured, the Empire's rule would never again be the same. The High Commander of the fleet gripped the edge of his table, claws digging into steel. His voice shook with fury, but also with something else. Something rare on ease. Destroy them, he ordered. No matter the cost. The battle had dragged on for hours. The void was littered with wreckage. Broken warships drifted like shattered bones across the stars. Some burned, some were cold and silent. Every direction was filled with fire, every second marked by death. But one truth cut through the chaos. Humanity still fought. The Empire had thrown dreadnoughts, cruisers, and wave after wave of gunships. Yet Earth's fleet, though battered and bleeding, stood like a wall of fire. They refused to retreat. They refused to surrender. On Earth, billions watched the battle unfold on their screens. Families held each other close. Children stared wide-eyed, their faces lit by the glow of burning ships in orbit. For hours they had waited for the final blow, the moment the Empire would crush their defenses, but that moment never came. Instead, something impossible had happened. Human warships were still fighting. They were holding the line against the greatest power in the galaxy, and then in the middle of the storm, a voice rose. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Admiral Reyes stood with blood on his face, smoke filling the air. His ship trembled under the impact of enemy fire, but his eyes were sharp, his voice steady. "Open a channel," he ordered. The cum officer hesitated. "To who, sir?" "To everyone," Reyes replied. His voice was low, unshaken. "To Earth, to the Empire, to the whole galaxy." The officer obeyed. Across human ships, across Earth cities, and across the Empire's fleet, the channel came alive. Static cleared, and then the voice of humanity spoke. It was not a voice of fear. It was not the voice of surrender. It was cold, steady, strong. "We do not kneel. We do not bow. And we do not surrender." The words rolled through every ship, every home, every corner of the battlefield. The people of Earth froze, breath caught in their throats. Imperial commanders leaned closer, their faces twisted with rage. Other species listening in the void trembled with shock. The voice continued. "You came to our skies with orders. You came with arrogance, with fleets, with threats. You thought us weak. You thought us broken. But you were wrong." Reyes's voice grew harder, sharper. "You will not erase us. You will not own us. If you want Earth, then come and take it. But know this: every mile you gain will be paid in blood. Every city you burn will cost you ships. Every human life you take will awaken 100 more who rise against you." Silence followed. For a moment, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, and then, from Earth, a sound began to rise. Not fear, not sorrow, but cheers, shouts, roars of defiance. Billions of voices cried out as one. Across the planet, people who had been silent for so long finally found their courage. They screamed their refusal into the skies. Humanity had spoken. Inside the Empire's command ship, the High Commander stood frozen, his claws dug into steel, his chest heaving with fury. His officers waited for him to speak, but even he struggled. To find words, he had expected surrender. He had expected weakness. Instead, he was answered with war, and worse, the humans had declared that war to the whole galaxy. The message had not just been heard by the Empire. It had been heard by their subjects, their slaves, their enemies. Across distant worlds, millions now knew the truth. Earth refused to kneel, and if Earth could defy the Empire, perhaps they could too. Back in orbit, the Dauntless shuddered under heavy fire. Reyes steadied himself against the railing. His crew looked to him, their faces pale, their bodies exhausted. But their eyes were filled with fire. "Sir," one of his officers whispered, "we can't hold much longer." Reyes gave a thin smile. "Then we make every shot count." The ship's cannons roared once more, blazing against the darkness. Across the fleet, Captains echoed his defiance. They pushed forward, even as their ships cracked, even as their hulls burned. Humanity had no illusions of victory. Had found something far greater than survival. They had found their voice. In the skies above Earth, the battle raged on. But in the hearts of humanity, something had already changed forever. They were no longer the frightened world waiting for its death. They were no longer prey trembling before the hunter. They were the fire in the dark. They were the storm that refused to die. And with one voice, they had declared their truth to the stars. We fight, always. For the first time in centuries, the Empire knew fear. Not because humans had won, not because humans had destroyed their fleet, but because humans had shown them something far more dangerous: defiance. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy trembled because the Empire was not facing just a planet. They were facing a species that would rather burn than bow. Humanity had entered the war, and nothing would ever be the same again. The stars above Earth still burned with war. The battle was not over. It was far from it. Wreckage drifted in the void, glowing like dying embers in the night. Human warships floated in broken silence, scarred and battered but still alive. The Empire's fleet, though mighty, had been forced to halt. They had expected to march through Earth's skies with ease. Instead, they found themselves fighting every second, losing ships they thought untouchable. And in the heart of it all, humanity's words still echoed: "We do not kneel. We do not bow. We fight." On the surface of Earth, the people had changed. Fear had once ruled the streets, but now fire burned in their eyes. Across cities and villages, men and women stood taller. Children pointed to the sky, not in terror, but in pride. The Empire had tried to break them with fear. Instead, they had united them with rage. Far beyond Earth, in hidden corners of the galaxy, others listened too. Species bound under the Empire's rule. Worlds that had been conquered and enslaved. For years they had whispered of freedom, but never dared to speak now. They had heard something impossible. A small world on the edge of the galaxy had refused. Humanity had not begged. Humanity had not surrendered. Humanity had answered with warships, and in the silence of forgotten planets, something stirred. Old flags were raised. Weapons were pulled from hiding. Words of rebellion began to spread like sparks in the wind. The Empire had ruled for centuries with an iron fist, but now the galaxy had seen that even iron could bend. On the Empire's flagship, High Commander Veros stood before a shattered screen. His eyes burned with hatred, his claws trembling with rage. "This should have been simple," he hissed. One of his officers bowed low, trembling. "The humans fight beyond reason, Commander. They do not break." Veros turned, his voice a growl. "Then we will break them, piece by piece. If they will not kneel, then we will burn their world until nothing remains." But deep within his chest, a seed of doubt had already grown. He had seen their defiance. He had heard their words. He knew what it meant. The humans were not just resisting. They were inspiring, and inspiration was a weapon far more dangerous than guns or fleets. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Admiral Reyes stood tall, his uniform scorched, his ship bleeding fire. He looked out at the stars where enemy ships still swarmed like vultures. His crew waited in silence, eyes fixed on him. He gave a faint, grim smile. "They wanted our surrender," he said softly. "Instead, we gave them our answer." The crew straightened, pride shining in their tired eyes. They had lost friends. They had lost ships. But they had not lost their spirit. In that moment, every soldier on every ship knew the truth. The battle for Earth was only the beginning. Hours later, the Empire's fleet finally pulled back to regroup. The skies above Earth cleared for the first time in days. Cheers erupted across the planet. Humanity had survived the first strike, but they all knew it was only the first. The Empire would return, stronger, angrier, yet the fear that once chained them was gone. Humanity had made its choice, and in the far reaches of the galaxy, other choices were being made as well. On slave worlds, whispers of Earth spread through the camps. On mining colonies, workers looked to the stars and dared to hope. On hidden stations, rebel leaders raised their heads and spoke a single word: humanity. The name no longer meant just a species. It meant defiance, it meant fire, and it meant the impossible. The Empire had thought they were crushing one world, but instead, they had lit a spark. In the shadows of space, fleets began to form. Weapons long buried were brought back to life. On distant worlds, voices rose. Not just in whispers, but in shouts. The dawn of resistance had begun. And at the heart of it, standing tall against the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, was Earth. The war was far from over. The true storm had yet to come. But as the first chapter closed, one thing had become certain. The galaxy would never be the same again, because humanity had shown the stars. Truth no empire could ever erase. They would rather burn than bow.